The night had settled softly over the quiet streets, but inside the bright glow of the convenience store, tension was about to rise into something unforgettable. A young black girl named Aaliyah, no more than 15, walked through the door with the quiet confidence of someone who had been raised to carry herself with dignity. She had only wanted a quick snack after finishing her homework, something simple before heading home to her mother. But life has a way of bending ordinary moments into crossroads of justice and identity, and tonight would be one of those nights. Aaliyah's curls framed her face as she moved through the aisles, picking up a bottle of juice and a pack of chips. She had always been taught by her mother to be careful in public spaces, to remain polite, to keep her hands visible. It was a reality too many black parents had to instill in their children, a survival skill in a world that often saw them first through a lens of suspicion rather than humanity. And tonight, despite all that careful preparation, Aaliyah would find herself in a moment where the weight of that lesson pressed down harder than ever before. As she made her way to the counter, she noticed the shift in the air. A police officer had entered the store, his uniform crisp, his hand resting casually yet deliberately near his holster. His eyes scanned the room, lingering just a little too long on her. She felt it immediately, that familiar prickle at the back of her neck, that instinctive awareness black children learn too young. She paid for her items quickly, sliding the change into her pocket, but the officer stepped toward her before she could leave. "Hey," he said sharply, his voice cutting through the hum of the refrigerator coolers. "Where are you headed in such a hurry?" Aaliyah froze, clutching her bag tighter. "Home, sir," she answered softly. "Home, huh?" His tone dripped with condescension. "And where's that? You live around here?" "Yes, I do," she said, steadying her voice, though her heart was beginning to pound. The officer studied her, eyes narrowing. "You know, we've had some trouble in this area. Kids shoplifting, causing problems. You fit the description." The accusation, baseless yet loaded, landed heavily. Aaliyah's throat tightened. She had done nothing wrong. She had paid for her things, kept her head down. But here she was, being cornered. She thought of her mother's warnings: stay calm. Don't argue. Respect, even when it's not given to you. "I paid for my things," she said quietly, holding up her bag as proof. The officer chuckled, shaking his head. "That's what they all say. Why don't you give me your name, and we'll see if you're telling the truth." Her chest rose and fell as she fought the urge to cry. "My name is Aaliyah Johnson." "And who are your parents?" he asked, almost mocking. At that moment, she felt a flicker of pride push back against the fear. She lifted her chin, her voice trembling but firm. "My mom is Judge Johnson. She's a federal judge." The officer stopped, then burst into laughter. A cruel, dismissive sound that echoed in the small store. "Oh, that's a good one. A federal judge? Your mom?" He laughed again, louder now, shaking his head. "That's the funniest thing I've heard all week." "Sure, kid. And I'm the president." The laughter stung like a slap across her face. Not just the disbelief, but the derision, the way he found it impossible to imagine that someone like her, a young black girl with brown skin and a soft voice, could be the daughter of a woman who held one of the highest, most respected positions in the nation's justice system. In his laugh, she heard all the unspoken biases, the prejudices, the stereotypes pressed against her existence. Aaliyah stood frozen, her fists tightening at her sides. She could feel the eyes of the store clerk and the other customers on her, some curious, others sympathetic but silent. She wanted to shout, to defend her truth, but her mother's voice echoed in her mind: "Control the fire. Stand tall. The truth does not need to shout, it will reveal itself." And then, as if the universe had chosen that moment to deliver justice itself, the store door swung open. A wave of quiet authority entered with the woman who stepped inside. Tall, commanding, dressed in a tailored suit with an unmistakable air of presence, Judge Johnson walked in like she owned every space she entered. Her gaze landed immediately on her daughter, then shifted to the officer. Her steps were calm but deliberate as she closed the distance. "Is there a problem here, officer?" Her voice was low, but it carried with it the weight of decades of courtroom authority. The officer straightened, caught off guard. "Ma'am, I was just questioning this young lady. She was acting suspicious." "This young lady," she interrupted, her tone now sharper, "is my daughter. And I would like to know why you felt the need to harass her inside a store where she has done absolutely nothing wrong." The officer blinked, his confidence faltering. "Judge Johnson?" He stumbled over her title, his earlier arrogance crumbling like dry paper. "Yes," she replied, her eyes narrowing. "Judge Johnson. Federal Court. And I take very seriously the mistreatment of my child by anyone, especially by someone sworn to uphold the law with fairness and integrity." The store had gone silent. Even the clerk stopped scanning items, his gaze fixed on the unfolding scene. The officer's laugh from moments ago now seemed to hang in the air like a ghost of his prejudice, shaming him more than any courtroom reprimand could have. "Do you find it funny," she continued, stepping closer, her voice steady but fierce, "that a black girl could be the daughter of a federal judge? Do you think her skin makes her less? Or are you so blind to the world you serve that you can't imagine black excellence when it's standing right in front of you?" The officer stammered, his words breaking apart under the weight of her presence. I didn't mean." "You did," she cut in, her eyes locked on his. "You meant every laugh. You meant every doubt. And you revealed more about yourself than about her. My daughter has done nothing wrong, and yet you humiliated her. That is abuse of power, officer. That is discrimination. And I assure you, it will not be forgotten." Aaliyah stood by her mother, watching the transformation unfold. The same woman who had kissed her forehead before bed, who had braided her hair and helped her with essays, now stood like a pillar of unshakable power, wielding truth like a sword. For the first time that evening, Aaliyah felt the fear dissolve, replaced by an overwhelming pride. The officer muttered apologies, his earlier dominance shattered into fragments. He backed away, mumbling about misunderstanding, but Judge Johnson did not let him retreat without the sting of accountability. "You will remember this face," she told him. "And you will remember the day you laughed at a black child for speaking the truth. I suggest you reflect on why you found her words so impossible to believe." With that, she turned to her daughter, wrapping an arm protectively around her shoulders. "Come on, baby," she said softly now, her strength folding into tenderness. "Let's go home." The two walked out together, the glass door closing behind them with a finality that felt almost like judgment itself. Inside the store, silence lingered, thick and heavy. The clerk exhaled slowly, and even the customers seemed shaken, reminded in that instant of how fragile dignity can be, and how powerful it becomes when defended with courage. On the ride home, Aaliyah looked at her mother, her heart swelling with admiration. "You came just in time," she whispered. Her mother glanced at her, a small smile playing on her lips. "You handled yourself with grace. That matters. Don't ever let someone else's ignorance make you doubt your worth." "But he laughed at me," Aaliyah said softly. "Let them laugh," her mother replied firmly. "Because the truth always outlasts their mockery. You are my daughter. And you are more powerful than they can even begin to imagine." That night, Aaliyah understood something new. She had always known her mother was strong, but now she saw that strength as something she could inherit, something she could embody in her own way. The officer's laugh had wounded her, but her mother's defense had healed that wound with a scar that would remind her forever: dignity is not given by others, it is carried within, and it cannot be laughed away. In a society where too many stories of black lives end in silence or sorrow, this one ended with a reminder of resilience. A mother and daughter walked home together, their bond unshaken, their pride intact, their truth undeniable. And though the officer's laughter might have tried to diminish one young girl's identity, it instead became the very moment she discovered her own unbreakable strength. For those who witnessed it, the scene in that store would not be forgotten. And for Aaliyah, it was the night she realized that the power of justice doesn't just sit on a bench in a courtroom, it lives in the bloodline of those who refuse to bow to prejudice, who refuse to shrink beneath doubt, who walk tall no matter how loudly the world laughs. Because sometimes, the most profound lessons are not taught in classrooms or books, but in moments of confrontation, moments where courage meets injustice, and dignity rises victorious.